and turn us on.
So is the floor open for nomination for chair?
And when's the IT, are we ready?
Yes, you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. I guess as staff, I'll welcome everybody. And I would say that nominations for the election of a chair are now open.
I nominate Senator Suderline.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations?
Move the nomination closed.
We'll close it. All those in favor, well, I'll tell you what. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Suderline, you are the chair, and I apologize. I probably should have called the roll before we took that vote. And if you want to chair, I will call the roll now just to see who's present.
Thank you. That would be great if Hobie would call the roll to establish a quorum. And then if we can hold that vote again after a quorum's established, I guess.
Sure. Delegate Krizik.
Here.
Delegate Adams.
Here.
Delegate Guzman. Delegate Samira. Delegate Askew.
Here.
Delegate Cole.
Here.
Delegate McNamara.
Here.
Delegate Walker.
Present.
Senator Lucas. Senator Eben.
Here.
Senator Suderline. Senator Bell.
Here.
Senator Kiggins.
Here.
All right, now that we have a quorum, if okay with Senator Suderline, we will take the vote again for chair. All those in favor of Senator Suderline, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Senator Suderline, you are the chair.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming to our joint subcommittee on block grants biennial meeting. We'll have a presentation describing why we have this meeting every 2 years. It's not the most involved meeting, but it's very important. We're going to hear some presentations from some folks later about the good work that they do with the resources that are made available by us fulfilling our federal requirement to have this meeting. So if you'd like to give the presentation on the background, that would be great.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm Ms. Sarah Stanton. I'm the staff to the Joint Subcommittee, and I'll give you a quick overview of why we're having this meeting today. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're here for the Standing Joint Subcommittee on Block Grants. The reason we're here is because the Federal Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1981 published a number of block grants that provide funding to states to support delivery of health and human services, including the Community Services Block Grant, the CSBG. The federal law requires states seeking funding to submit a plan for the proposed use and distribution of funds to be provided, and to hold at least one public hearing on each proposed plan prior to submission. In 1982, the General Assembly established the first Joint Subcommittee on Block Grants to provide a forum for holding that public hearing. In 1993, Senate Joint Resolution 223 established a standing committee for that purpose. So we are that standing committee and are here today to hear public comment on the state's application for the CSBG. Currently, the CSBG is the only grant for which a public hearing is required, so we will not need to have any additional meetings. The purpose of the CSBG is to provide assistance to community action agencies and other neighborhood-based organizations providing services intended to reduce poverty, revitalize low-income communities, and empower low-income families and individuals in rural and urban areas to become fully self-sufficient. Encouraged to use funds provided through the block grant to accomplish the goals of the block grant. That would be through making grants to organizations to strengthen community capabilities for planning and coordinating the use of a broad range of federal, state, local, and other assistance related to the elimination of poverty so that assistance can be used in a manner that is responsive to local needs and conditions. Organizing a range of services related to the needs of low-income families and individuals so that services may have a measurable and potentially major impact on the causes of poverty in that community and can help families and individuals achieve self-sufficiency. Utilizing innovative and effective community-based approaches to attack the causes and effects of poverty and community breakdown. Ensuring maximum participation of residents in the communities and members of groups served by programs assisted through the CSBG to empower residents and members to respond to the unique problems and needs within their communities, and broadening the resource base for programs directed to the elimination of poverty so as to secure a more active role in the provision of services for private, religious, charitable, and neighborhood-based organizations and individual citizens, businesses, labor and professional groups who are able to influence the quantity and quality of opportunities and services for the poor. So what we will do at the end of the meeting today, during the meeting today, you will hear an overview of the state plan and the application. And then we'll hear comment from several groups that receive funds, and we'll hear some of the good work they do. At the end of the meeting, you'll have an opportunity for questions and then be asked to vote whether or not you approve the application. I will provide a written summary of the meeting that will be made available to you, our members, and also to the department that will include the summary of this public hearing on the grant application with its application to the federal government. So that is where we stand.
All right, thank you very much. So I hope everyone understands why we're here now, and we're all here to represent different parts of the state in this process. Moving along on our agenda, we'll now hear an overview of Virginia's Community Service Block Grant State Plan from the Commissioner, if he is ready to provide that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Joint Subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to present today and answer any questions you have. And really just want to acknowledge our appreciation for you coming together once every 2 years just to hold this hearing on our state plan according to the requirements of the federal government, and really the importance of the transparency of what we're doing with the Community Services Block Grant. Before we begin today, I also want to acknowledge the great work of our community action agencies throughout the Commonwealth in continuing their services during the pandemic, as well as stepping up to fill in gaps in service and helping specifically with the rental assistance program that was created and a lot of the anti-hunger initiatives happening across the Commonwealth. And on that note, September is Hunger Action Month, which is why I'm wearing my orange tie, the color of the anti-hunger movement. And I just really want to extend my appreciation for all their great work. So the Community Services Block Grant State Plan details how Virginia allocates the federal CSBG as well as TANF funds. So the legislature allocates TANF funds every year. And so we have to account both on the CSBG as well as the TANF funds on how we allocate those to the 28 local and the 3 statewide community action agencies. It also describes the types of programs and activities that the community action agencies will operate over the next 2 years. The Virginia Community Action Partnership and Community Action Network has provided significant input and involvement into this 2020 to 2022 state plan. This year, we held 2 comment periods for community action agencies to provide feedback. The first was held on January 7th, 2020 through February 7th, 2020, and included a presentation on the state plan changes in January. And the second comment period was held from March 23rd, 2020 to April 23rd, 2020. And the third and final public comment period from June 1st to June 30th. At this time, the exact amount of the federal CSBG funds that Virginia will receive is uncertain. However, if the federal funds remain at last year's level, the total contracted amount of CSB dollars from the Department of Social Services to community action agencies for fiscal year 2020 will be $11.3 million. The department is also happy to have an additional TANF funds to distribute to the network, with the General Assembly raising the annual appropriation of those funds from $6.25 million to $7.75 million in this past session. This increase will allow programs designed to meet the needs of low-income individuals and families throughout the state to continue and expand, and will assist the community action agencies to reach full compliance with the organizational standards set by the federal government. So while the federal CSBG is 10.5 and the TANF is 7.75, the total budget for community action agencies is approximately $153 million. That's because the agencies across the Commonwealth do a tremendous job raising private funds and obtaining other sort of public and philanthropic dollars to support their efforts. I mean, I think this is a real testimony to the strength of our community action network across the Commonwealth. And the number of individuals served average over 190,000 each year. The record of this public hearing will be forwarded to the Office of Community Services. It will complete our CSB state plan. This submittal will occur by September 30th, 2020, and that will make the state plan effective October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2022. The administration of CSB in Virginia is somewhat unique compared to other states. We have one of the most cooperative efforts in the country between our community action agencies, the state association, VACAP, and the Department of Social Services. The department provides oversight and technical assistance to local community action agencies. We work closely with the agencies and VACAP to identify technical assistance and training needs, and have developed a joint training plan with VACAP to address those needs. We also collaborate with VACAP to deliver and receive information from the network, and we lead several peer groups and task forces. We work with VACAP and the network to maximize the use of the Earned Income Tax Credit. Together, we establish local coalitions to create public awareness, assist families in developing financial literacy, and provide free tax return preparation to assure that all Virginians who are eligible for EITC take advantage of this important benefit. BDSS also carries out a direct marketing plan to notify all recipients of DSS benefits of their eligibility for the EITC. And this year, we've been piloting the use of texting services as an outreach tool, which has yielded some really helpful data and important insights to increase our participation rate. Our rate, last calculated by the IRS, was really consistent with the national average of 79%. We are also looking for the upcoming year to provide virtual EIT services, given the probable need for continued social distancing and really the preference for virtual services across the board. In the 2022 state plan, there are several major items of emphasis from the department's perspective. One area is related to our monitoring. The monitoring practice will continue to be modified to create less of a time burden on the agencies by decreasing the time spent on site and doing more of our monitoring activity through sort of desk audits and virtual and virtual work. This effort has been accelerated due to the pandemic, and we're really in a strong position to be as both efficient in terms of the use of people's time, as well as effective in terms of really understanding how those dollars are being spent and ensuring that we're really fighting poverty and fulfilling the promise of the community action agencies. Another area of emphasis in this next phase of our work is to build a network that's in full compliance with the federal community service block grant organizational standards. This is a relatively new initiative where the federal government sort of updated their organizational standards, and they're pushing across the nation for full compliance with all of those standards. It's a very high bar, but it's very important and impactful work. Our last state plan included the adoption of the standards and the move to decisively and quickly become one of the leaders in the nation. Our office has also developed, and agencies now use, a database for receiving, reviewing, and determining compliance. We are also currently developing guidance for agencies to go beyond compliance and increase capacity and performance. We've developed a schedule for monitoring standards and ensuring that agencies continue to meet them. We have analyzed all of the standards and have developed a technical assistance and training plan with each individual agency, and in cooperation with VACAP have been providing large-scale trainings and individual tailored technical assistance to help each agency. We continue to use the results from the American Customer Satisfaction Index, ACSI, to continually improve and better meet the needs of community action agencies. A few areas for improvement from the 2019 survey were improving stakeholder understanding of the state plan process and improved linkages and partnerships with state agencies. Both these areas within which we are continually working to improve and address. We've delivered trainings, webinars in the state plan, added additional comment periods that I referenced earlier. We'll assess the success of these improved measures moving forward. We'll be continuing the development of more meaningful outcomes through the results-oriented management and accountability process referred to as ROMA. This is the performance management framework for community action agencies across the nation. Our staff is working with VACAP and the network to move Virginia to the national forefront. We're considered a model today in the nation for the use of ROMA. Materials have been developed using a task force of representatives across the network, and those materials are now being used across the nation in other states with other community action agencies. Virginia has more than 30 certified ROMA implementers, including staff members at the Department of Social Services. This national certification ensures that each agency has at least one trained individual who can lead efforts to have better, more comprehensive and actionable needs assessments in their communities, develop strong and impactful strategic plans, create solid implementation plans, and develop and utilize tools to collect, analyze, and evaluate data. All of this produces change in the lives of the individuals and communities that we serve. It also helps ensure that agencies are able to meet ROMA standards on a consistent basis. So these are some of the things that we are focusing on as a state agency in relation to the plan. But, you know, this is a public hearing and not just a presentation. So I'm happy to take questions, I guess, Sarah, at the end of the presentations as opposed to now. Is that how we want to handle it, or Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think that way, if members have questions for what they hear, it might be explained during those presentations. So
Great.
Thank you for that. And we might hear back from you again in a little bit then.
Great. Thank you.
We're now going to hear from some of the stakeholders. These are some of the folks involved in leading the organizations that provide these services. And first on the agenda is the President and CEO of Virginia Community Action Partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I hope that you can hear me clearly.
Sound great?
It's an honor to appear before you today to discuss the Community Services Block Grant State Plan and the significant accomplishments of Virginia's community action agencies on behalf of people and communities most in need in Virginia. I am Jim Schuyler, President and CEO of what the Commissioner has already called VACAP, Virginia Community Action Partnership. We are the state membership association for Virginia's 28 private and public community action agencies and 3 statewide organizations. Sarah and the Commissioner have given you a really good picture of community action. I'm going to give you about a 1-minute addition to that. In 1964, the Economic Opportunity Act created the Community Action Program, along with other programs such as Head Start. Many of our agencies are continuing to serve as providers of Head Start and Early Head Start. As Sarah said, in 1981, Congress enacted the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, which consolidated the programs that were authorized under the Economic Opportunity Act under the new Community Services Block Grant, or CSBG. CSBG is the only federal program with the explicit and overarching goal of reducing poverty regardless of its cause. CSBG pursues this goal by providing critical and flexible funding to the nationwide network of local community action agencies and supports their locally driven comprehensive approach to fighting poverty. Since 1981, community action agencies have received supplemental funding through state general funds and more recently through federal TANF funds every year with the support of successive governor's administrations and bipartisan support from the General Assembly. We are very appreciative of the support that we receive each year. We are also very appreciative of the funding that VACAP receives that goes to support the coalitions that the Commissioner spoke about, who provide free income tax preparation services for lower income families in the Commonwealth. The keys to the success of this almost 55-year-old network are trust and collaboration. Over time, community action agencies have built the trust of their local communities, people of low income, the business community, local and state governments, the faith community, other nonprofits, community organizations, and citizens. CAAs are frequently the convener of diverse groups in the community seeking common goals. They are the organizations that collect and analyze data and assess community needs and how best to meet the most urgent and unmet needs. They develop partnerships between the private and public sectors, involve business people, citizens, local governments, and help work with the poor to determine and prioritize local needs. They collaborate with other community partners, as well as local governments and other community action agencies in their region. As the Commissioner said, another collaboration that is crucial to the success of community action in Virginia is the relationship among VACAP, the state CSBG lead agency, the Office of Volunteerism and Community Services of VDSS, and the 31 agencies in the network. This relationship has become increasingly important in the past few years as CAAs have worked to strengthen their performance management and outcomes measurement. This has involved monitoring and providing technical assistance to the agencies as they have worked to meet the comprehensive set of organizational standards established by the federal government. This has resulted in agencies becoming data and outcomes driven and focus on developing strategies that include input from their clients on their goals and result in transformational work to assist those who are seeking to escape and stay out of poverty. I must agree with the commissioner. The close and collaborative relationship among the three of us is the envy of most states in the country today. This is certainly true in the development of the 2020 to 2022 state plan, which is the result of communication and listening among all three partners. It's demonstrated by outstanding training and technical assistance efforts, network peer-to-peer learning, and a very positive and welcoming attitude between the Office of Volunteerism and Community Services and the network. I'm very pleased that with funding from the General Assembly this last year, 6 community action agencies are participating in a multi-year, 2-generation whole family pilot project that is overseen by VDSS. This project, now entering its 2nd year, was moving along quite well, with families developing and implementing family plans with the assistance of a coach and staff at each of those agencies. As you would expect, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the kind of assistance being provided to families in the pilot expanded to deal with families' immediate and urgent needs: emergency assistance for rent and utilities, housing assistance with homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, as well as access to housing, education and employment assistance, referrals for health and mental health services, and other supports provided by this whole family program: technology hardware, childcare, food, payment on education loans, car payments and insurance, uniforms, dental care, gasoline and phone card. These programs all will involve significant data analysis and tracking of a family's progress towards self-sufficiency. These approaches include major collaboration with other nonprofits, government, business, philanthropy, and citizens to be successful and provide lasting changes in families' lives. We are very hopeful that we will learn a great deal from these pilot programs and that this will result in more rapid adoption of whole family strategies by most agencies in our network. They will reap the benefit of the lessons learned in this important pilot project. In fact, the entire Community Action Network and its provision of services and programs has had to adapt to the changes brought about by the health crisis and economic crisis in recent months. While most agencies initially moved toward remote work for most of their staffs, each of those agencies shifted much of their work, funding, and staff time to provide emergency services for families in greatest needs in their region. Most agencies continue to actively provide food collection and distribution, as well as supermarket gift cards for those in need. Early on, many agencies began providing rent and utility agencies, and most of our agencies now are either administering or referring families for the new Virginia Rent and Mortgage Relief Program funded by the Federal CARES Act and managed by the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. Many agencies are delivering meals and prescription medicines to senior citizens and children, working with restaurants in the community, as well as Head Start centers and other kitchen facilities. During the summer, they participated in the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Summer Food Service Program, providing free healthy meals and snacks to children and teens in low-income areas. Many of our agencies are assisting small businesses in the community with loans and assistance to business and individuals in applying for COVID relief programs. At the same time, our agencies have developed innovative plans to continue to provide continuing regular services to clients in need. Our network has been on the front lines of the health pandemic and economic crisis from the beginning, and I can assure you we'll continue to provide assistance to families and businesses in need until people and their communities recover. I'm very pleased that we have VACAP's current board chair, Annette Lewis of TAP, along with Keisha Preston, a TAP client, joining her, and VACAP's immediate past chair, Rob Goldsmith of People Incorporated, to give you an on-the-ground report of the outstanding work they're doing at this time. Community action agencies make a significant contribution to the quality of life in Virginia and to the economic development and growth of communities. They work to provide opportunities to lower income families to become more self-sufficient. And as they are showing during this pandemic, they are there in times of crisis to do whatever they can to ease the pain and suffering of those who are most affected by the health and economic crises that we face. I strongly urge you to approve the CSBG plan so that these agencies may continue their efforts to strengthen families and communities across Virginia. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. The most powerful and impactful testimony will come from the next three witnesses who represent the work done throughout our Commonwealth. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I know you plan to stay on the line, but please do so you can get any questions a little later. Our next speaker is from Roanoke, Annette Lewis. Annette, Ms. Lewis, you ready to go?
Thank you, Chairman Suderlund. Good afternoon to the members of the Joint Subcommittee. Thanks for this opportunity to meet with you and share with you this afternoon in support of the Community Service Block Grant State Plan. As Senator Suderlund stated, I am Annette Lewis. I am the chair of the Virginia Community Action Partnership Board, and I am president of Total Action for Progress, which is better known as TAP. Founded in 1965, following the passage of the Civil Rights and Economic Opportunity Acts of 1964. TAP is the 55-year-old designated community action agency for 11 jurisdictions that include the cities of Roanoke, Salem, Covington, Lexington, and Buena Vista, as well as the counties of Roanoke, Bath, Craig, Botetourt, Allegheny, and Rockbridge. Though we have been designated in these communities, TAP services expand across other areas in the state based on the wide array of services that TAP provides for the disenfranchised and some of the most vulnerable, like small children and pregnant moms, youth who would be the first in their families to go to college, adults needing to complete or increase their education, gain skills and employment, fathers who have been released from prison in need of parenting and relationship skills, as well as jobs, homeless veterans and their families in search of housing, small business owners in search of startup or expansion funds, homeowners in need of lower utility costs secured as a result of weatherization services, neighborhoods with blighted property being renovated, and victims of domestic violence seeking safety and a safe and secure location for their children to visit the abuser without fear of continued abuse. Our focus is on identifying the needs of families and helping them to address them. This past fiscal year has presented new opportunities as well as challenges for those we serve. TAP provides over 1,000 children a Head Start education in 18 centers as well as partners with 11 private child care centers to help them enhance the quality of their services. We were proud to work with United Way Smart Beginnings, public schools, private child care centers, and the Lynchburg Community Action Partnership, Lynchburg Community Action Agency, Head Start program to establish the first regional single point of entry system in the state. The system increases access and decreases the struggle to find appropriate child care services for the low income, working parents, and those seeking to increase their education. Partnerships have strengthened in the midst of the challenges presented by COVID-19. Through creative collaborative work with employer partners such as Carilion Clinic, the largest employer in the region, and Medical Facilities of America, a leading health and rehabilitation company, TAP was able to continue to provide nurse aid training during the pandemic, which closed most programs across the state. 93 nurse aides completed training April through June of this year. This enabled TAP during the fiscal year to supply partners with more than 450 qualified employees to work with hands-on patient cares during the pandemic. In the first 3 months of the pandemic, we provided 5,000 meals and groceries to families in need. We have expanded our annual feeding program to the Hispanic community, specifically in the Roanoke Valley. We concluded our summer feeding program this year after providing 11,974 meals. 8,500 of those meals were provided to Hispanic families. TAP also operates a community development financial institution, providing SBA and community economic development loans, ranging from $5,000 to $100,000. To help businesses during the pandemic, we assisted our customers in SBA CARES Act loan applications. Additionally, we refinanced 50% of the agency's loan portfolio for business owners affected by COVID-19. The cities of Roanoke and Salem have also reached out to TAP to manage their small business loan program for COVID-19 affected businesses. When many earned income tax credit service providers across the state closed their doors during the trying COVID-19 period, TAP kept its doors open as long as we possibly could, and we prepared 700 tax returns with refunds totaling over $1 million. We are the regional provider of the Department of Housing and Community Development's CARES Act Rent and Mortgage Relief Program. Our services have expanded at the request of local jurisdictions to manage the distribution of their CARES Act relief funds. Since July 1, TAP used $330,000 of its $450,000 in DHCD award to help over 200 families stay in their homes. Because the number of families in need continues to grow, TAP has been awarded another $450,000. Domestic violence hotline calls and crisis intervention services have increased by 20%. We anticipate at least 1,200 hotline calls by the end of this fiscal year. With a reduction in beds due to social distance requirements in the area's domestic violence shelter, TAP has had to place its fleeing survivors in hotels until housing can be secured. We were pleased to secure a federal grant for transitional housing. We have exceeded the goal to place 25 survivors and their families in housing, having already found housing for 40, and the need continues to grow. As TAP works daily to assist those in need, improve their quality of life, we are working with local partners to improve the housing stock in low-income communities. We are also collaborating with local partners to develop a pilot Healthy Homes initiative designed to address physical and structural health and safety needs of homeowners. We have developed a Tap Books social enterprise to raise discretionary dollars, create jobs, and give books to those in need. CSBG funds have enabled TAP and the other 30 community action agencies that comprise the VACAP network provide the needed opportunities for struggling families seeking to escape poverty. Stated by Jim Schuyler, the Office of Volunteerism and Community Services has been a strong partner. The network continues to make advancements thanks to the technical assistance, training, and support of Fran Inge, Matt Fitzgerald, Abby Hanks, and the entire OVCS staff. We also appreciate the guidance provided by Commissioner Duke Storin. The state CSBG plan is a result of open communications and input from the VACAP network. We hope that it will be approved. It gives me great pleasure, Mr. Chairman, to introduce before you do someone who has taken advantage of the opportunities presented to her when she found herself in need of assistance, Ms. Kaisha Preston. And following Ms. Preston, you will hear from the immediate past chairman of the VACAP board and someone who has led People Incorporated into the most innovative community action agency in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Mr. Rob Goldsmith. Thank you, Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. It's great to hear from you today, as always.
Thank you.
Ms. Preston, we'd like to hear from you now.
Hello, and thank you. My name is Kaisha Preston, and on March 9th, 2016, I ended an abusive relationship for good. I'd been married for over a decade, and things had been bad the entire 10 years. We were high school sweethearts who got married incredibly young, and when my former husband returned from his first tour of duty in Iraq, everything about our relationship changed. He was drinking to the point of blacking out with no memory of what happened the night before. He was having mood swings that sometimes showed up unprovoked. He was aggressive, regularly having violent outbursts, and he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. His first night home from his deployment, I said something he didn't like, and his response was launching a picture frame at my head. I knew in that moment that our marriage had been a mistake, and I knew that I wanted out, but I stayed for another 9 years convinced that I could save him, convinced that it was my duty as a wife to stand by him for better or for worse, enduring what I had to see him get the help that he needed to return to being the man that he was before. Over the course of the next 9 years, I was subjected to all types of abuse. I was pushed, I was shoved, forcefully grabbed, torn down verbally, and threatened with physical harm. I was told that I was worthless and should kill myself, and some days I thought about following through. My efforts to work and continue my education were sabotaged, leaving me financially dependent on him to survive, and regularly, as punishment for making him mad, he cut off my access to money, forcing me to beg or fall in line to meet my basic needs. If I used the word abusive to describe the way that he was treating me, I was gaslighted into thinking that I was crazy and reminded that in the midst of everything that I was going through, he'd never actually hit me. So I was dramatic for using that word and insulting to women who were actually abused. I made excuses for his behavior. I blamed myself for his behavior. At times, I convinced myself that I deserved his behavior, and I worked overtime to cover up for him and hide his behavior. From the outside looking in, everyone thought we had a perfect marriage because I was embarrassed and working really hard to maintain the illusion that things were fine. March 9th was the day that I finally put my foot down and said no more. We were separated and he was no longer living at home, but he was still monitoring my whereabouts and attempting to control me from afar. His behavior had become increasingly unsettling, and I was becoming afraid of him in a way that I had not been before. We had a verbal altercation when he showed up that day to visit with our kids, and he left with the threat that our fight was far from done. Knowing that he owned a gun and afraid of what he might do if he returned, I decided to change the locks on our home for safety that night. When he saw via a home security app that the doors to the house were open, he came back, parked down the block where he couldn't be seen, hid in our bushes, spying on me, and I was attacked when he realized that I was changing the locks on the doors. He began attempting to force his way inside of the home while yelling and screaming that I'd been caught. He grabbed me forcefully and left to leave bruises on my arms and refused to let me go until I fought back. I called the police, who showed up and asked me what I'd done to provoke his behavior, followed by telling me that since technically he also owned the home, there was nothing they could do to make him leave. I went downtown, got a protective order, pressed charges to put his behavior on record, and in response, he drained our joint bank accounts, completely refused to pay court-ordered child or spousal support, and I was left with 3 kids, $0, and no jobs. I began skipping bills and maxing out credit cards to survive. My credit was destroyed, and when my home eventually went into foreclosure, despite the fact that I had found a really good paying job by that time and I was more than capable of paying my bills, no one would rent to me because my credit history had been destroyed, and I found myself facing homelessness with my kids. Knowing the severity of my situation, I started searching online for help, and that was when I found TAP Domestic Violence Services. Upon reaching out to TAP, I was connected with a caseworker who helped me create a safety plan when the legal system failed to protect me. I received mental health counseling. I was connected to a support group where I met other victims and for the first time felt like I wasn't alone. TAP provided me with an advocate who accompanied me to court and helped me stay the course, opposed to being intimidated into backing down. They stepped in and helped me keep my lights on when my utilities were at risk of being turned off. They searched tirelessly with me for housing when I was at risk of having no place to go. They paid my first month's rent and security deposit when I finally found a landlord who was willing to give me a chance. Because of the help I received from TAP, I'm safe. I avoided homelessness. My children have a warm place to sleep at night. I learned to break codependent habits. I rediscovered who I am. But the most valuable thing that TAP gave me was education that I didn't have before. We're taught as a society not to discuss things like domestic violence, so I spent years unsure if what was happening to me was actually even abuse. Because I wasn't sure, I didn't leave. Now that I'm better informed, I know what red flags to watch out for, and I feel confident in my ability to never stay in a situation like that ever again. Because of the services I received from TAP, I took my power back, and I've since used my personal story to advocate for other survivors. Last year, I wrote the Virginia Domestic Violence Victims Protection Act, which was signed into law by Governor Ralph Northam on March 23rd of this year. This law helps victims of financial abuse avoid the housing challenges that I face by removing the barriers that I encountered as a result of credit check requirements. I was invited to the U.S. House of Representatives as a guest speaker for a congressional briefing on violence against women, and I helped start important conversations on things most people didn't realize were a problem. I worked alongside Gloria Steinem and Tamron Hall for a national domestic violence awareness event, and I'm more active than ever in my community in hopes of continuing to create positive change. The Community Service Block Grant helps fund programs like TAP, and because of the help that I received, I'm no longer a victim, but a survivor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Preston. Appreciate you telling us about how you've been helped by TAP, which has helped a lot of people here in the Roanoke Valley. Our next speaker on the agenda is Mr. Goldsmith. Mr. Goldsmith, if you're ready, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Rob Goldsmith, and I'm President and CEO of People Incorporated of Virginia, a community action agency headquartered in Abingdon. It was established in August 1964, and that currently serves 13 counties and 3 cities in Southwest Virginia, in the northern Shenandoah Valley, in the northern Piedmont, and the greater Prince William County area. We offer 27 programs that enable economically disadvantaged people to reach their goals in order to enhance their lives, their families, and their communities. We provide opportunities in child and family development, community economic development, community development, workforce development, affordable housing, as well as a wide range of human services. Last year, we served 11,305 people in 6,614 households. Although due to COVID-19, we have changed our primary mode of interacting with our clients from face-to-face to virtual and telephonic, we haven't slowed down at all. In addition to continuing our normal services, Over the past year, we purchased 8 apartment complexes, which we are currently rehabilitating. That brings us to owning and managing a total of 1,031 affordable housing units. We recently became the new Head Start program operator for Frederick County, Clark County, and the city of Winchester. And we have hired 34 new employees for that program. In responding to COVID-19, in addition to altering our normal modes of operation, we dramatically expanded our provision of emergency services and relief efforts for those who have lost income in the economic fallout from the pandemic. Our Empowering Culpeper, a volunteer-based food distribution initiative, expanded from previously serving 520 households with a once-a-month food distribution to now serving 2,253 households with twice-monthly food distributions. We assumed responsibility for the Wagner-Pizer Job Seeker Services in the New River Mount Rogers Workforce Development Board area, where we are the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act one-stop program operator, so that the Virginia Employment Commission, which normally provides the Wagner-Pizer services, could transfer its staff to unemployment compensation work. In the last year, we have made $26 million in investments in 3 new large businesses, the most recent of which is Polycap, a new manufacturing facility in Russell County that will create 65 quality jobs that will be accessible to local people without specialized training. We launched a community revitalization project in the Trammell community, a former coal camp in Dickinson County that is riddled with dilapidated, often vacant houses. We also launched one of the 6 whole family approach demonstration sites in the Commonwealth and have enrolled clients and begun serving them. We believe, as Jim Schuyler mentioned, that the whole family approach will show a more effective way to move people out of poverty. But we don't rely solely on our assumptions or our beliefs. People Incorporated has an evaluation department that tracks our former clients for 3 years to assess the long-term impact of our services. We've provided about $1 million for up to 3 months of rent or mortgage assistance to over 300 households using Community Services Block Grant CARES Act funding designated for community action agencies, as well as the rent and mortgage relief program funding through the Department of Housing and Community Development. One of the beneficiaries of this assistance was Deontay Lyles of Prince William County, who is employed by the Washington Post as a mail clerk. He had been working full-time, but his hours were reduced to 1 or 2 hours a day due to the pandemic. He is a single father of 2 children. Deontay had no alternative resources to be able to pay his rent. He's unsure when or if his hours at the newspaper will pick up. I have to tell you that the Virginia Department of Social Services and the Commonwealth are doing a much better job of getting these funds out to local community action agencies than other states are. Until last month, I sat on the board of the National Community Action Partnership, our national association, and heard from people in other states complaining about not receiving a contract for CARES Act funding or even their projected funding levels at a time when People Incorporated had already deployed over $300,000 in direct client assistance using this supplemental funding. People Inc. is also assisting very small businesses that have been hit hard by the pandemic. Since the 1st of April, we have made loans totaling approximately $1.5 million to 42 businesses using a special Small Business Administration microloan product that will only require the borrowers to repay less than $400,000. Our average borrower has 3.17 employees and has borrowed $28,214. One of our microloan borrowers is Bob Upman Tool Sales, LLC in Fauquier County. Mr. Upman contacted us regarding a loan for his tool business as the coronavirus pandemic began to take a toll on his previously thriving business operation. In making his request for a $30,000 loan for working capital, he mentioned not only the financial relief it would provide to him, but also the emotional impact it would have on him to get the requested funding. He had grown accustomed to his business being steady and predictable until the sudden drop-off in sales directly resulted in a loss of personal income. Mr. Upman is certain his business will rebound quickly once the economy reopened if he can survive the recession, but he was feeling a great deal of stress about how he was going to make it until that point. His loan application was approved, providing him much needed financial and emotional relief. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to conclude by noting that this is a team effort. We could not be achieving these results without the TANF funds that you appropriate to community action agencies. We could not be piloting the whole family approach without your appropriation for that demonstration. We could not get timely assistance to people who are suffering through no fault of their own without the enlightened and expedited partnership of the Department of Social Services and the Department of Housing and Community Development. We would be running out of rental assistance were it not for the governor's creation of the RMRP program, and we couldn't do anything of significance without our 236 local partners and our 1,531 volunteers. Again, I thank you for your time and your interest in what Community Action is doing, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That completes our agenda of speakers. It's now time for discussion and questions. Do any members of the subcommittee have a question for any of our presenters?
Mr. Chairman, this is Delegate Krizak.
All right, and I saw Delegate Adams raised her hand, so we'll hear Delegate Krizak first and then Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say how impressed, as always, I am with Community Action, and especially listening to Ms. Preston. She gives a powerful voice to the good that's being done with this limited amount of money. I also want to recognize what Commissioner Storin said, that that's $153 million budget. So that means my back of the envelope calculation is that there's an 8-to-1 leveraged dollars from the local and private sources. So that's impressive too. So this is obviously having a big impact on our community. But I wanted to ask a question regarding the situation now with the pandemic and the new COVID economy that we're in, and a lot more people who are unemployed and furloughed, and just a big concern. So it seems to me that well, let me ask the question then: are we seeing a lot more of the local community-based nonprofits that you all partner with? Are they struggling now to receive those donations from the community, and are they becoming overwhelmed with the need? I mean, I've seen some things on social media with huge lines. I think it was in Chesterfield regarding food, food distributions. And it also seems to me that you're doing a lot more of what you used to do. And this is really a 50-year success story, but it has become more of the local faith community and the nonprofits that have been doing a lot of those kinds of services. Are you now backstopping? And I leave this open to everybody, Jim and anybody who wants to answer this. But are you now backstopping a lot of that local nonprofit? And are we concerned? What's our concern for the future? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rob and Annette, I think this is yours.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may start in trying to answer that question, the short answer is yes. People Incorporated has focused primarily since 1990. We have focused on long-term developmental activities with the people that we serve. Our goal has not been emergency services or to deal with short-term needs and short-term solutions, but to provide long-term solutions for people. But as soon as the pandemic hit, we immediately switched to providing a lot in way of emergency services. We have deployed over $1 million in emergency services since April, and of the Community Services Block Grant CARES Act funding that we received, we budgeted $1 million from that money for emergency services. So we really have focused much more on emergency services. As your question implied, many of our fellow nonprofit organizations are struggling, are cash strapped, and so where we could have picked up the slack. We also, I think it's important to note, put a lot of effort into coordinating and collaborating with them. In Prince William County, on the rent and mortgage assistance, we have held virtual meetings of all of the nonprofits in the area that are providing rent and mortgage or any kind of assistance like that, to make sure that people get the services that they need and that we use the dollars that are available as effectively as we can.
If I may, Delegate Prizzick, I would say the same thing. I'd have to ditto Rob for what he has experienced in his region. We certainly have in the Roanoke Valley. We have seen increases tremendously in emergency assistance. Like People Incorporated, TAP, 20 or so more years ago, decided that the best way we can help people is to help them to progress, stand on their own 2 feet, be able to go out, make their own purchases of food, get their jobs. And that's what we have focused our attention on. But COVID-19 changed everything. And I'm really pleased that even though the nonprofits have been stretched, as TAP has been, I mean, we have been putting people in hotels left and right, still are, trying to protect them from COVID-19 and trying to rapidly rehouse them. TAP stepped up when one nonprofit had to restructure their services so that they could have a location for homeless individuals that had to quarantine themselves. And while they were restructuring, they asked TAP, would you please step up and help us to work with the other homeless individuals and help place them in other locations? We too had a COVID-19 community response team where we were meeting weekly, and we collaborated together, pooled all of our resources together to make sure that people did not fall through the cracks. I'm so proud of our jurisdictions, as well as we had Delegate Rasul in our area working with us to make sure we had the proper PPE. So very proud of our region, but yes, resources are definitely needed, additional resources, and we are just grateful for what we have received, thanks to the General Assembly.
And if I could just sort of jump in, Delegate, we have seen a real spike in demand for anything related to helping people meet their basic human needs. Medicaid is up 18%, SNAP is up 12% from a year ago, just as a sort of a benchmarking. Our number of applications are up significantly. I would say as we are now moving into the fall, a lot of the federal benefits that helped stave off more profound poverty in our communities are starting to disappear. The pandemic EBT that replaces the school meals with a household benefit expires at the end of September. The $600 supplement, weekly supplement to unemployment insurance has expired, and there's a very limited amount of money for the $300 to $400 replacement through the executive order. And then sort of some of the pandemic unemployment insurance extensions we'll start seeing in January and February expire. So while I think our community action agencies and other nonprofits and food banks, AAAs have done a great job, I think if we look down the road before us, I think we're in for much more difficult times and much more pronounced poverty and hunger.
Delegate Krizik, I'll take it from another perspective, which is looking to the future. I am very hopeful that the agencies that you see here today will be the agencies that are available to assist downtowns, to bring back Main Street, to help create jobs, to expand a childcare system that needs growth, to bring back early childhood education. There is so much that will need to be done once we get through this part of the pandemic. There's a lot of skill within this network to do that. So I would really hope that we both take care of these emergency services and that we're able to move people and businesses to the point where we can help those economies grow back so that we don't have a longer term problem, which is one that's extremely difficult to resolve.
Thank you, everyone, for that. Delegate Krizik, do you have any follow-up on that?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to really quickly just thank everybody, and I recognize that you've had to pivot to the emergency need, and that you've been doing a great job of preventing poverty as well as combating it. And hopefully I know you're going to keep doing both, and hopefully this pandemic starts to wane sooner rather than later. But I do pledge to you that I will do everything I can from the General Assembly side to continue to provide resources and to urge my colleagues to do the same thing, because I know this is one of the most critical things we do. And I thank you, and I want to thank especially Keisha Preston for her strong testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to all the speakers. It was a very informative presentation. Certainly you all are doing tremendous work. And like Delegate Krizik said, pivoting in the time of crisis to address the poverty associated needs of people who have really been affected by this COVID crisis has been crucial. And, I think sadly we have a long road ahead of us. My question is probably for the commissioner, just specifically since this is a statewide program, do you have a firm grasp on the participants by community? And I guess my question is, if so, are there any large counties or communities who would not be receiving these block grant funds? And if there are, would you have any information about, why that would be the case?
Yes, thank you, Delegate Adams. So if you look statewide, all but 10 localities receive CSBG funds through the network of community action agencies, assuming you set aside the 3 statewide community action agencies, which are really sort of single issue, single purpose, like prisoner reentry or something along those lines. So when we talk about the 28 local community action agencies, they serve all but 10. I think Chesterfield and Henrico, Rockingham, Harrisonburg, Winchester. I can get, if you give me a minute, I can pull up my map and get out a few, or maybe James or my colleagues at DSS know the others. So, the allocation of funds and the participation in the Community Action Network is really driven by the local level. And so local governments have a couple options on how to participate in that. And I want to spend a lot of time, although I'm happy to be more exhaustive if you'd like, but they have the option either to ask one of the existing community action agencies to serve them, or they can identify a local not-for-profit, or the sort of the third and least preferred option as articulated by the federal government is for a local government itself to be a community action agency. So by statute in Virginia, we are sort of set with our 28. Doesn't mean we can't add, but we can't sort of detract the service areas of the existing 28 community action agencies. I know in the case of, I think, Chesterfield, Henrico, and I think maybe Colonial Heights is the third one in that little pocket of the state, that they were approached by community action agencies asking if they wanted to participate. And at that point in time, they chose not to. Doesn't mean that that wouldn't be something that they wouldn't want to do in the future. If they want to designate one of their local not-for-profit organizations, there's a series of requirements that they have to meet, including local match of 20%, makeup of their board, participation by local elected officials, as well as participation by low-income individuals in their communities. So it is certainly possible. We certainly have a very clear statewide picture, and we are certainly always open to working with our local governments to do that. I don't know if my colleague, James Schuyler, or the woman who knows this better than anybody, Fran Inge, head of our Office of Volunteerism and Community Programs, has anything to add to that. Thank you. Fran, do you want to add, or Jen?
The only thing I'll add is if you are aware that there is someone who may be interested in pursuing this, we are happy to sit down with them and kind of map out the process. Because obviously we're stronger as a network when we're covered by the entire state. So it would be nice to have all of the state covered. So we're happy to work with local governments that may be interested in pursuing.
And I am happy to respond to my delegate, Dawn Adams. We equally would be happy to sit down. I think it's our friends at DSS who know all the rules. It is a local decision, and that's got to be made by up to the Board of Supervisors in those counties. And then it would go through to the department and through to the governor to actually approve that designation. But I think what you're hearing is it's that first process that is critical. Once that agency has been selected, if it were another nonprofit, they would have gotten through a process at DSS where they really are fully qualified to be a community action agency. It also involves the tripartite board that the commissioner spoke about. So, I mean, there are a number of hoops to jump through to do this. And if they are ready to talk to us, we're ready to talk with them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in follow-up.
Certainly.
Two of the three counties that I represent, Richmond City, Chesterfield County, and Henrico County. So what we know about Richmond City is that many residents have moved out into the bedroom communities or the larger counties of Chesterfield and Henrico. So I don't know at what point they last considered this, but certainly it would seem important and prudent to reconsider this. So I appreciate your indulgence in me asking the question, and certainly would look forward to working with members of Chesterfield and Henrico to join with the other stakeholders involved in the community action agencies and certainly all of the good work that you're doing. So again, I appreciate your efforts. I know this has been a tremendous challenge over the last 6 months, and we will do everything we can to support you all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question also.
Yes, delegate.
So if I understand correctly, the localities that are not participating are leaving federal dollars on the table that they could be getting and putting to use. Is that correct? Whoever can answer.
Hi, this is Duke Storn. So there's a fixed pot. It's a block grant. So there's a fixed pot of federal dollars. And so if these 10 localities were to participate, we would just be distributing those federal dollars in a different way. We have a formula that's driven by what we have in code and by federal law and regulations. It's predominantly driven by the number of low income participants in the geographic area being served. It also includes the number of jurisdictions that are served by a particular community action agency. So serving 6 versus 4 or serving 12 versus 10 would impact the formula as well. And then 5% goes to the Department of Social Services for administrative support, and 5% goes to our statewide offices, or statewide community action agencies. So we're not actually leaving money in Washington. We'd be distributing Washington's money differently.
It's a fixed pot for the Commonwealth, or is it a fixed pot for the entire country?
Both.
Thank you both for that question and that answer.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
this is
is there another question?
Mr. Chairman, this is Senator Bell. I have a quick question.
Yes, Senator Bell.
Mike, I'm not sure who'd be the appropriate one, but we talked about audits of agencies who received block grants in the past. Were there any findings that are noteworthy for the committee from those audits?
So I'm going to turn it over to Fran Inge to answer that question from the Department of Social Services.
I can. Thank you, Senator Bell. And actually, I'm going to pull in Matt Fitzgerald also, who manages and actually does, he and his staff are the ones who actually go out and do the monitorings. And Matt, do you want to kind of chime in on the monitoring part?
Sure. We review annual audits in our office, and I mean, we had findings, but no significant findings, nothing that led to management decisions or anything of that nature. So there were audit findings that were things like income eligibility, pieces like that, that we then followed up on and have included in our monitoring, but nothing of significant findings, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the answers. I think that's an important part as we go forward to make decisions for who participates in the program, that we know that we have folks who are following the rules, and that we're obviously being good stewards. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, what we're going to move towards then is the actual vote on the recommendation of our subcommittee on the CSB grant state plan. If counsel from the Department of Legislative Services could tell us what the ideal motion would be, then we can see if someone would like to make that, and then any discussion of that motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So what has happened in the past is the motion would be to approve the state plan, the Commonwealth Community Service Block Grant State Plan. And should that motion carry, we'll include that statement in the meeting summary that is provided to DSS to include with the application.
Great. Would someone like to make that motion?
Before
we move, I have a question. This is Mark Cole.
Yes, Delegate Cole.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I guess, the subcommittee's recommendation is only needed to go into the DSS report or application to the feds and really doesn't go to like appropriations or Senate finance or anything like that?
Yes, I will have council respond more, but yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's accurate. This joint subcommittee is required to hold a public hearing on any federal grant application for which a public hearing is required. We are, and then to vote on that. So we have satisfied that requirement once the vote is taken. This is not a legislative action that needs to go through the legislative process, go to appropriations or anything of that nature.
All right. Thank you both. Would someone like to make a motion? Delegate Creaser.
So moved.
Yeah, okay. I'll second it. And specifically the motion that Senator Bell made was to recommend that this joint subcommittee on the Commonwealth Community Service Block Grant approves that state plan.
Great. We have the motion before us. Everyone understand it? Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. As many as favor the motion, I will signify by showing your hand on the screen. All right. And anyone that opposes the motion will signify by putting your hand on the screen. All right. By an overwhelming majority, we have approved. That completes our business for another 2 years. Appreciate the folks that came today who now have a lot of work before them to go make good use of these resources here in the Commonwealth. And I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. As many as favor that motion to adjourn will signify by showing your hand on the screen again. All right. Any that oppose that motion? All right. There's some opposition, but not enough. We are adjourned. And I very much want to thank Ms. Stanton and Mr. Lehman for putting this together for us and for everyone that came and testified today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.